I started with data in the field, collecting samples. I went around to all of the cemeteries in New Orleans, Lafayette, between Lafayette and Catahoula, Breaux Bridge, Henderson, St. Martinville, Jeanerette, New Iberia, Opelousas, all the way out to Sulphur, Lake Charles, Homa. And I had just started working with the images and playing with them and analyzing them and using them as building blocks to build sequences, small sentences. What I ended up with ultimately, what I call Grief Enjoys Clothing, is a statement of the iconography of this tradition being the painted concrete Madonnas of southern Louisiana, which form a coherent, distinct, local tradition. Grief Enjoys Clothing is 26 images long. This was not an accident. There are 26 letters in the English alphabet, and these are almost quite literally the alphabet of this tradition. In other words, if you were going to describe the iconography of this tradition, how would you describe it? You wouldn't really describe it in words. You would describe it in the same language that the tradition uses. But you break it down and you simplify it into its elements, the essential elements, the vocabulary, the most representative units, the most productive units, the most combinable and evocative units. The images all center around the face because that's really the heart of the tradition. That's where the action happens. The outer garment is typically blue, the inner garment is typically white. And that doesn't vary a whole lot, although, for example, white can be around blue, or you can have a completely odd color scheme like brown and green. I've seen once, examples that are outliers and don't really represent the true essence or expression of the tradition. So the blue and white doesn't change very much, but the faces change. And I don't believe that anyone's ever noticed this feature of the tradition. I don't think anyone's ever assembled enough of the images together to catalog them. And that's really the only way that you would notice things like this, because when you see these statuettes, there's one here, there's one there, and you don't get a sense of the big picture. But when you go out, take photographs of these, hundreds of these photographs, distill them to the essential images, arrange them in some sort of logical sequence, then you're able to notice the subtle variations that would have otherwise passed you by. Things like the eyes are painted, but the mouth is not painted, which is a very common expression of the tradition, what I call the demi-visage, which is really completely odd in a way. You have this upper half of the face that's painted and the lower half is noticeably unpainted. You know, why does this happen? Why do people who paint these statuettes come up with these patterns that are so stable? Especially because the tradition is, I'm pretty sure that it's passed almost osmotically. You know, there's no formal instruction. People just kind of pick one up, and they may have some idea of other statues that they've seen, but when they approach it, they kind of, you know, put their own spin on it. They figure out which regions to color in, how many colors to use, which ones to leave unpainted, which features to paint. And yet, from this disorder, you come up with this incredibly almost rule-based syntax, visual syntax